Edward Scissorhands by Samuel Luker. The main characters of this film are Edward Scissorhands, who plays the protagonist. The antagonist of the film is Jim. The last name is not ever discovered in the film. Kim Boggs plays the deuteragonist of the film. Peg Boggs, Kim's mother, is also a protagonist in this film. The scientist or the inventor is the posthumous tritagonist of the film, and Esmeralda is another antagonist. The beginning. Edward Scissorhands is a 1990 American fantasy romance film produced by Tim Burton and Denise Denovi, starring Johnny Depp as Edward Scissorhands. The movie begins with an elderly woman telling her granddaughter about a boy named Edward who has scissor blades for hands. The plot. A scientist builds an animated human being, the gentle Edward. The scientist dies before he can finish assembling Edward, leaving him unfinished, highlighted by the scissor blades he has instead of normal hands. A loving suburban saleswoman, Peg, discovers Edward and takes him home, where he falls for Peg's teen daughter, Kim. As their neighbors are curious about the new house guest, the Boggs throw a neighborhood barbecue, welcoming him to the neighborhood. Most of the neighbors are amazed by Edward and befriend him, except for the irregular religious fanatic Esmeralda and Kim's boyfriend Jim. Edward decides to repay the neighborhood for their kindness by trimming their hedges into topiaries, progressing to grooming dogs, and even styling the hair of the neighborhood women. At Christmas, Edward carves an angelic ice sculpture modeled after Kim. The ice shavings Edward throws into the air fall like snow, something that had never happened before in their neighborhood. Suddenly, Jim arrives, calling out to Edward, surprising him and causing him to accidentally cut Kim's hand. Jim then accuses Edward of intentionally harming her, but Kim, who is tired of Jim's jealous behavior towards Edward, breaks up with him. Meanwhile, while that was going on, Edward runs away in a rage and with fear until he is calmed by a wandering dog. Kim's parents go out to find Edward, while Kim herself stays behind in case he returns. Edward returns, finding Kim there. She asks him to hold her, but Edward hesitates, afraid of hurting her again accidentally. Jim and his drunken friend drive back to Kim's house and nearly runs over Kevin, a supporting cast member in the film. But Edward pushes Kevin to safety while inadvertently cutting him in this process. Accused of attacking Kevin, Jim attempts to assault him. Defending himself, Edward cuts Jim's arms before running away again. Jim ambushes Edward and fights with him when he finds him in the Gothic mansion that Edward was discovered in by Peg in the beginning of this film. Edward refuses to fight back until Jim slaps Kim when she attempts to intervene and stop Jim. Enraged by this, Edward stabs Jim in the chest and pushes him from a window of the mansion, killing him. Kim then confesses her love to Edward and kisses him before she departs, leaving Edward alone in his Gothic mansion. As the neighbors arrive, Kim convinces them that Jim and Edward killed each other. The elderly woman from the beginning of the film is revealed to be Kim. She finishes telling her granddaughter the story and says that she never saw Edward again. She believes he is still alive because it would not be snowing without him. Edward is then seen carving ice sculptures of his experiences with Kim, with ice floating in the wind as snow. The theme of this movie is very interesting to me. Edward Scissorhands is a movie that has a theme of self-discovery and conformity. Once Edward was discovered by Peg, he begins his journey of fighting to fit in and being accepted for who he is on the inside, rather than being judged by his appearance. A detail of the film that I really enjoy and think is a great job of portraying this is when he is taken by Peg to their family's neighborhood, which is full of bright colored homes and people wearing bright pastel colors, who all dress and look the same, which makes Edward stand out upon his arrival with his pale skin and dark leather clothing. This story also has a very good underlying message. And this film has a moral story to it about good and evil and a lesson about not judging a book by its cover. As a culture in today's society, we are still quick to judge and even quicker to dismiss what we think is different. Edward Scissorhands is one of the best examples of a film with a deeper meaning underlying the movie itself. Edward is told he is incomplete based on his appearance. But on the inside, he is the most complete person in this film. Throughout this entire film, Edward teaches the importance of accepting our differences and the importance of leaving our bias to the side.